stories will thrive. Welcome to another video by the Blue Tongues of Hell for some more Hilda Chronicles. This chapter is called The Gallant Assassin. In Gronelgar Castle's great hall, Queen Eleanora diligently led the evening ceremony of lighting oil lamps in ornamental alcoves. She held a long burning beeswax candle in her left hand and lit the wicks of twisted moss, bathing in cod liver oil. Some lamps were simple clamshells, while others were reminders of past glory. Calvaria lamps that shone through the eye sockets of fallen enemies' skulls. Her husband sat at the dining table with Gunnar, and they both watched Eleanora sailing through the hall in a long white dress made of Arctic hair and fox skins. Around the queen's neck flowed a flowery white catkin of fur from both animals. Two heads completed the soft trimming, and the fierce fox and its prey faced each other on Eleanora's chest. The king waved the servants away and kept chewing on the roasted grouse neck that he always liked to fiddle with after supper.
When you finished, could you dust the elk heads?
Said Ogni, mistaking his wife for a maid on purpose. Yours does need dusting, my dear, but without an axe, I won't be able to reach inside, she replied with a wink. Gunnar forced himself to think of unpleasant memories of his mother and tried not to laugh. He was good at keeping a straight face and quickly got up to move a chair back for Eleanora. Thank you, Gunnar, but I won't be staying.
Sick again?
Asked King Ogni with the solicitude of a stuffed owl. Sick of fighting for trinkets of the past? Very much so. There's more to life than slaughtering your neighbors for baubles, you know.
Let the traitors get away with robbery,
said the king, banging his fist on the table. A flap of grouse flesh bounced onto Gunnar's nose and plopped into his aurochs horn. He blinked a few times and wisely ignored the added ingredient to his hot mulled cider. Eleanor noticed Gunnar's expression of concealed annoyance and smirked. Your son is home, Ogni, and you should be glad for that.
Should I? Takes a lot after you, that boy. Even before, his head always used to be filled with the same drivel. And it doesn't take a soothsayer to wonder why. He turned soft, just like half our bloody army is now.
They're all tired, sick and tired, and so am I. Good night. Ogni watched his deformed reflection stare back at him in his lukewarm drink and grumbled.
That's our cow. How dare she?
Gunnar waited for the king to break the following awkward silence, and it became obvious that he never would. Gunnar cleared his throat and offered to check the castle's entries and secure the second floor, as he always did. One could never be too careful, especially with the local nutcase on the prowl, butchering villagers left and right. Gunnar found Eleonora outside. She was trying to rip the rampant ivy off the kitchen door and cursed the infuriating plant that would never go away. She wept at the sight of her grazed palms and hid her rolling tears shamefully when she saw Gunnar walk through the doorway into the moonlight. He calmed the queen down with a soft voice and escorted her to her chambers, where Gunnar would let her play with him for a while. When she had finished and the coast was clear, Gunnar had slipped out of a room to assist the king, who was now drinking by the fire.
Gunnar, you look exhausted,
said King Ogni, when Gunnar stealthily appeared beside him.
Don't we all, your majesty? Perhaps we could discuss war tactics tomorrow morning with your daughter, now that she has returned. Indeed, sometimes we forget to live when burdened by duty. Helheim can tremble with fear at the break of dawn. Hilda claims she knows how to crack that seagull shit fortress open. So take the evening off, Gunnar, and have some fun. That is exactly what I intend to do, my lord. Thank you for your generosity,
said Gunnar, giving the king a respectful nod before sneaking through the kitchen pantry and down to his forgotten dungeon. In a dank room with charcoal walls and no windows, a black rat sniffed at an ochre paddle and hesitated to give it a lick. The wet tiles reflected a wooden cross above. The rodent chose to investigate the hovering ripe smell of moist flesh. When it hopped onto the cross, a brown toe suddenly twitched and the rat finally scurried away. Kara groaned and tugged at the leather straps and iron shackles. torture apparatus she was tied to could be inclined at different angles, and her long white hair dangled downwards, covering her face. She tried one last time to morph back to a fox, but the liquid she had been forced to drink was preventing her from shape-shifting. How she missed the moon, the stars, our woodland home under the great ash tree. Our mission to cleanse the island of all humans seemed trivial now, hanging by the wrists and ankles. Sweat and blood dripped onto the cracked tiles, and she laughed nervously. How angry she had become. How ridiculous she would get when talking to her own sister. She had forgotten the little things in life that meant so much to her. And in a twisted way, it was thanks to her captor. The double doors to the dungeon opened one after the other, and a man dressed in black entered with a limp hair over his shoulder and carrying a bottle of Mana Ash wine in his left hand.
Good evening. Everyone still alive? I was told to rejoice tonight, so I thought we could all celebrate together with one of the king's finest beverages.
Gunnar plunked the bottle onto a dinner table and let the little hair flump onto his workshop slab. Kara saw him open an oak wood cabinet and uncork a small vial. Gunnar gave it a short sniff. He walked back to the hair, picked up a pair of tweezers, and pried open the hair's maw to pour half the vial's contents down its throat. Gunnar nonchalantly strolled over to Kara and gave the metallic lever behind the cross a pull, which brought the wooden cross swinging backwards. He yanked the rod a few more times, and Kara was now supine, staring up at him vindictively. Despite his bouncy entrance, Gunnar was less talkative than usual. His deceptively mellow voice was clearly not as painful as the sharp knives he used on his victims, but the vile torture and voice tone were interrelated. And not hearing him ramble on about human nature or foreign lands was almost worse, because Kara knew that when he resumed his monologue, the pain would follow. The dreadful expectation was torture in itself. Gunnar ignored her glares and defiant struggles and picked up the unconscious hair. The white animal squirmed, and the king's guard hurried over to a far wall, snatched a lion-bast rope attached to the ceiling, and hastily hog-tied its hind legs. The hair began to froth at the mouth and dribble violet liquid, and Gunnar rushed over to his cupboard to fetch another clay vial that he quickly popped open. Kara could only just make out what he was doing. and saw him hold the empty vial upside down near the hare's mouth, waiting for something to happen. According to Gunner's frustration, when the hare ceased to wriggle about, nothing did. In a fit of rage, he lifted his arm to smash the vial against the wall. But suddenly stopped, as if time had frozen, and he let his simmering fury cool off.
You can't control your own emotions. How do you expect to control anyone else?
He thought, and popped the vial into his pocket. Gunnar looked over his shoulder and opened his mouth, and Kara knew her time was up.
Too bad.
He said with a stiff smile.
Not one of your kind, after all. Should have known when I found this sleeping beauty near the woods this evening. Didn't have any violet juice on her.
He said, sweeping the room full of skulls and headless corpses with a panoramic gaze.
That said, you didn't have a gift for me either, did you?
Gunnar walked up to a stained table where a man with long red hair was tied down on his back, and he dragged the wooden slab towards Kara, making the table legs squeal.
Fret not, foolish vixen. You can express yourself, you know. I haven't planned to play with you today. Or tonight, should I say, to be more specific. These repetitious lives we lead do become so draining, wouldn't you agree? For some, more than others.
Said Gunnar, pressing the pit of the unconscious man's stomach with an index finger. Kara couldn't understand how this twisted vermin could know so much about the Huldra, and why the mist hadn't wiped his memory after so many waves. Someone must have betrayed us, she thought.
So, no venom to spit in my face this time? Perhaps you are cold, Lady Fox,
said Gunnar, drawing a slim, sharp knife.
This winter has been particularly cold, hasn't it? I can barely feel my feet,
he mused, stroking one of her bare thighs with the tip of his blade. Gunnar continued to talk, but turned his back on Kara. All she could hear beyond his condescending banter was a faint sound of drenched drapes slopped onto rocks after dyeing them in a river.
Here, my lady. I hope this will keep you warm,
he said, revealing a string of glistening entrails he slowly pulled out of the male's abdomen. Gunnar lifted Kara's head and delicately wrapped the bloody bowels around her neck like a soggy scarf.
There. Don't thank me yet. Lady Fox, I know you enjoy our little conversations, and I have to admit that I probably do more. However, I find it rude that your species spill the beans so easily about your most extraordinary secrets. And yet you refuse to share your names. I will not go so far as to call that attitude hypocritical, but you would agree that giving one's identity should be considered a less sensitive source of information than, let's say, the ingredients to Liminosia potions.
Kara was already horrified to be the man's captive. The fact she could feel the pulse of a fellow Huldra slowing down through the warm, sticky organs wrapped around her neck only increased that feeling. Yet to learn that another Huldra had spoken of Liminosia they used, amongst other things, to prolong their human appearance, almost brought her to tears.
Ah, I see the winter scarf didn't bother you as much as my knowledge of your cunning recipe. I will be candid with you, Lady Fox. Your fuzzy friends here didn't even know how to make the humanizing liquid.
Gunnar spotted Kara's almost imperceptible sigh of relief and added,
But I haven't given up my research. I might one day stumble across a more noteworthy guest in the woods, while the mist has expired from your inert bodies and drifted away to haunt the plains. Someone who works in Nebelwood kitchens, perhaps. A careless kid who is too hungry for juvenile flesh to know she had met her match.
Kara squirmed on the horizontal cross and tried to push away the pulsating rope of guts with her chin. Gunnar appeared delighted, like a patient angler getting a bite at last.
It is a strange business your kind specializes in, and I don't think the world is ready to acknowledge that such creatures truly exist. But when you stop to think about it,
He said, placing his knife between the man's lips to pry his mouth open.
it is such a marvel to be able to mutate the way you do. Who would dream of flapping their wings and rising into the clouds, swimming in the deepest seas, biting massive chunks out of seals with rows of shark teeth? So, the question I have for you today, this vixen, is why not share this peculiar talent with those you wish to imitate? Why transform into bipeds if you aren't deeply obsessed with becoming like us?
Gunnar filled a goblet with wine and brought the man ash to his lips. He paused for an eternity, and then poured the glass over his victim's face to wake him up.
Ah, where's the pleasure if you don't witness your own ending?
he said, as the male Huldra splattered and coughed up blood.
And I don't expect you've had many chances either to see how beautiful you are on the inside.
When the man's screams died down, and the irregular heartbeat Carr could feel around the neck finally stopped, Gunnar leaned over the victim. His face almost touched the Huldras, as Gunnar waited in vain for another phenomenon to occur.
Do you believe in the existence of spirits? The human soul? Of course you do. A Huldra without a soul would be like a riverbed without water. So fascinating and annoying at the same time,
He said, pushing the male Huldra to the floor. Carr gasped for air as the necklace of organs squeezed her throat. Her skin went luminosy and violet as she thrashed about, lacerating her wrists and sore ankles on the rusty shackles.
I have a few leather bottles you might like to see. Perhaps they belong to some of your best friends. Your kind spread like wildfire. I'm sure it's hard to keep track of all family ties.
Huldra are my family, said Kara, grimacing. She wanted the butcher to finish her off, and found the strength to spit a cloud of bloody saliva in his direction. Scum! You aren't worthy of having your blood sucked out, she said, trying to scream at the top of her voice, which was more of a wheezing whisper.
Strange lot indeed. Some of you as peaceful as pigeons,
said Gunnar, thumping the cross and wiping the blood out of his eyes.
Others as deadly as dogs. A fine family, to be sure. Now, young child of the woods, tell me this, and I will free you of your misery. Why does the mist never expire from your bodies when far from the forest? Oh, I see you may be wondering why I have ever been able to witness such a sacred act of mass manipulation. Well,
He said, stroking a black wall with 2 fingers.
this seems to do the trick.
Gunnar drew 2 black lines between her breasts, down to her abdomen.
Charcoal. For some brilliant reason, soot and a few other key ingredients preserve me from your foggy attacks. And when I wear a balaclava dipped in charcoal paste, you never see me coming. Or those half-men and women sleeping so peacefully while they undo history and twist everyone's minds. It's like walking into the cursed mountains of Nibelungen and picking up whatever prize you fancy. Nebelwood becomes the Garden of Idun, and all the golden apples are mine to pluck.
Gunnar drew his black sword dipped in his personal charcoal mixture and slashed through the organ, strangling Cara. They fell to the floor like dead snakes, and Cara choked in shame. How could this pompous prickle in the posterior think he could get away with it? Cara growled and closed her eyes.
Feisty as always. I thought you had changed for the better, but some just never learn,
said Gunnar, showing Cara a leather bottle.
See this? Any idea what it is? No? Cat got your tongue.
Gunnar popped the cork and inhaled the bottle's empty contents.
Unfortunately, nothing. I thought I had captured one of your miserable souls 9 full moons ago. And believe me when I say I have tried a lot. But whenever I decide to make the next step and drink one of you up, the bottles are always devoid of spirit. Any hint as to why? No, as you can see, I've tried daubing the leather in charcoal paste. That doesn't work. I've even attempted to harvest the mist as it returns to smaller beasts, slicing their throats as the life returns to them. But to no avail. Watching you die on the slab and crosses rarely gives any results of mist emanation, and I think it has mostly something to do with the broken balance of temperature between your petrified bodies and the damp cold in this dungeon. Most frustrating.
Cara couldn't hear him speak anymore. She saw the full moon through the ash trees, the trembling withered leaves whispering through the canopy. In a simmering mist of despair and anger, Cara saw her forest home go down in flames. She caught a glimpse of Kyoko being buried alive. A horrendous final battle was taking place on Vigrid Plains. Rever appeared, badly burned by lava falling from the dark skies. Someone from the Helheim Kingdom was being stabbed in the back multiple times by Drogs. Hordes of dead villagers swarmed the fields, trying to devour the last sane humans, fighting hand in hand with the Huldra. When Gunnar stuck his knife under Cara's eyelid, she exploded. The roar she made shook the dungeon, and broken skulls rattled on the walls. She morphed into a powerful Drog with dark grey skin, and her white hair wavered. Gunnar looked fascinated. Something new to add to his studies of the Mistfolk. A possible breakthrough. His demeanor switched to alarm when Cara's muscular limbs cracked all the manacles. She pounced onto Gunnar, slashing with dagger claws, and threw him out of the way. She destroyed everything in her path, including the 2 doors to the torture chamber. Before Gunnar could realize what had happened, Kara had shifted into her fox state and scampered out of sight down the tunnels. Bleeding badly, Gunnar hobbled after the fox while thinking how marvelous his evening had been.
A drog. I had a magnificent drog in captivity, for hell's sake. And what have we learned? That the drogar can snuff out the effect of Liminosia. Most interesting.
What is all the fuss about, Vadir? Asked Hilda, storming into the main hall, where King Ogni was still sitting by the fire.
Gunnar says the folk of the forest sent a spy to poison Eleonora. He's all worked up for some reason. Says we have to go on a fox hunt at this ungodly hour. The man is off his rocker,
Interjected Asmund, stretching his arms.
He must have stolen the wrong bottle of Mana Ash wine this time and poisoned himself. Very witty, Prince Asmund,
Said Gunnar, walking past him. His arm and chest were bandaged, and he could not stand up straight. Blood trickled down his cheeks from under a black patch covering a lacerated eyebrow.
I suppose you think these are self-inflicted wounds, and that I didn't save your mother from a terrible death by testing a bottle of wine before serving it to her. I have a poisoned hair to show if you wish. This bottle of wine, Lord Gunnar. When exactly did you serve it to my wife?
Asked the king.
I was going to do so before she went to bed, Your Majesty. She requested a goblet to help her sleep. As soon as the hair I tested the beverage on started to bleed from the eyes and mouth, I chose to investigate the crime immediately. I apologize for not informing you earlier, but as royal guard, I felt it was my duty to protect the crown by flushing out those responsible as soon as possible. You know only too well, with the infamous missing organs, that a sickly crime goes cold quickly, and evidence fades as the moon wanes. Gunnar, the way you protect my wife is none of my business,
Said the king, patting Gunnar's forearm.
Your diligence is almost unerring, and I thank you for saving the queen. However, what does a fox hunt have to do with cuts and bruises? Come on, did you fall into a bear's den on your night out? I did not, Your Majesty. I found the culprit in the kitchens, and I was about to bring him in for questioning when a masked accomplice struck me from behind. I defeated the cook easily, but the other armed spy scarpered, and when I got to my feet to look outside, I saw a fox.
A fox, added Hilda, fitting a cork back into her leather pouch and wiping her lips.
For Rant's sake, let's not play dumb here. Everybody knows what lives in the woods. One of them was spying on us in your own home, King Ognish. I think it is time we waged war on the folk of the forest and enslaved them. Gunnar, are you calling me dumb? Strange, 'cause I thought my most loyal advisor called me dumb.
Playing dumb, said Hilda. He thinks you don't know anything about local myths or childhood stories.
Your Highness, I would never do such a thing. If I offended you, it is only due to fatigue and the blows I received from the Huldra spies,
said Gunnar, grovelling a step further away from the king.
Then I suggest you get some rest. We have other matters at hand than burning down forests and enslaving imaginary beasts,
said King Ognish.
Take the day off. I insist.
Gunnar knew he had reached the dead end, bowed obsequiously, and left. That battle could be won another day. Hilda and Asmund came to sit next to the tired king. Hilda laid her head on an armrest, while Asmund stood and stared into the fire.
The only poison Eleonora will receive is from that man's lips,
said King Ognish. Still asleep during all this racket. The queen must have a few bottles stashed under her bed, said Hilda. Ogni didn't bother smiling. He assumed his daughter's mood swings were due to Hilda's own drinking issues. He avoided the subject, as he had done since the death of Hilda's mother.
Son, I hear you also have something to ask of me.
Hilda swiveled her eyes to her brother and winked.
Fadir, I believe our guest in the Woodland prison has suffered our harsh hospitality long enough. Would you not consider letting her go? If you wish me to leave with her, so be it. Whatever you decide, I will accept.
King Ogni gave his son a long, piercing look.
You wish to abandon us again?
He said, then his expression softened.
Your companion probably didn't deserve our sour welcome, I agree. But she arrived at the worst of times. Everyone fears the flaming snatcher, but we have more fish to fry than dealing with social delusions. You can see how debilitated we all are. This war needs to end. And son, I need your fresh vision and strength to end it with me. Of course, Fadir. But what about Kyoko? She had nothing to do with the bodies. They were blocks of ice before we arrived. I know, Asmund. I know. Bring her home if you like, so I can get to know the lass,
replied the king.
But keep her out of sight if you can. We've had enough wild fox chases as it is. Thank you, Fadir. You won't regret it. Any objections, Dottir? Let's just forget about the bee incident and move on, shall we? No use getting our hands dirty to appease the peasants.
You don't think I had something to do with Surtur's madness, do you? Said Hilda indignantly.
My innocent little Hilda. A killer with an insatiable thirst for blood. Whatever would make you think that, Dottir? Surtur and Asmund were simply in the wrong place at the wrong time, that is all. Now we need to welcome the young foreigner into our home and learn about her distant lands.
Hilda bit her lower lip and thought of how freeing the woman of the sea could benefit her, or how a terrible accident would be more befitting. Solving the organ snatcher murders could be done later. Also, she found Gunnar's wild story of a Huldra spy in the castle to be unsettling news. And Voluspa was obviously withholding too much information. And Gunnar needed to let the cat out of the bag. Thanks for letting me freeze to death in the woods, by the way, Brodir, said Hilda, switching to a sweet tone.
My pleasure, sister. I suppose you found the correct punishment by leaving us behind during a snowstorm and spending a few days by a warm fire.
Something like that, yes, she said, smiling at the thought of the howling cauldron. And then she remembered the obnoxious face of Kyoko. See you soon for the next chapter of